In what might be the most desperate act of political damage control since Gordon Brown tried to convince us he wasn't miserable, Keir Starmer has suddenly discovered that Angela Rayner, the deputy he unceremoniously sidelined and humiliated for months, is actually fantastic and might deserve another chance at relevance in his struggling government. Yes, you heard that right. The same Angela Rayner who was stripped of key responsibilities, kept at arm's length from major decisions, and basically treated like an embarrassing relative you hide when posh guests come over, is now suddenly being praised to the heavens as Starmer desperately tries to shore up his collapsing support among Labour's working-class base and the trade union movement. The about-face is so dramatic, so transparently cynical, and so politically calculated that even seasoned Westminster observers are struggling to keep straight faces while reporting on it. This is desperation politics at its finest, and it's absolutely glorious to witness. Make sure you're subscribed to British Mirror and hit that notification bell right now, because we're about to dissect a political U-turn so shameless it makes a politician's promise look reliable, and you'll want to catch every delicious detail of this unfolding drama. Let's rewind and appreciate just how magnificently awkward this situation is, because the context makes Starmer's sudden Rayner rehabilitation tour even more ridiculous. When Labour won the election and Starmer became Prime Minister, Angela Rayner was technically his deputy, both in the party and supposedly in government. She'd been elected deputy leader by the party membership in a separate contest from Starmer's leadership election, which meant he couldn't just sack her if he wanted to. She had her own democratic mandate, her own power base, her own support among members and unions. In theory, this should have made her unsackable and influential. In practice, Starmer immediately set about marginalizing her so thoroughly she might as well have been working from a broom cupboard in Swindon. The cabinet positions Rayner was given were significant on paper but limited in actual power. Deputy Prime Minister sounds impressive until you realize it's largely ceremonial. Her other portfolios, while important, were carefully chosen to keep her away from the big-ticket economic and foreign policy decisions where real power resides. It was the political equivalent of giving someone a fancy title and a nice office while ensuring they can't actually do anything that matters. Starmer's team made it abundantly clear through briefings to friendly journalists that Rayner wasn't part of the inner circle, wasn't invited to key strategic meetings, and wasn't trusted with the serious grown-up business of governing. The reasons for this sidelining were fairly transparent. Angela Rayner represents everything about Labour that makes centrist, Tony Blair-worshipping, focus group-obsessed strategists nervous. She's northern, she's working class, she didn't go to university, she speaks her mind in occasionally colourful language, and she has genuine support among the Labour left and trade unions. In other words, she's authentically connected to Labour's traditional base in ways that Starmer, with his knighthood and his metropolitan lawyer background, simply isn't. Rather than seeing this as an asset, as a way to maintain crucial links to voters Labour desperately needs, Starmer's team apparently viewed it as a liability and set about minimising her influence. The way Rayner was treated became increasingly obvious and increasingly humiliating. Major policy announcements would happen without her involvement or even her knowledge. She'd find out about government decisions from the news like everyone else. When she did appear at events or give speeches, Number 10 would make sure to brief journalists that she was speaking for herself, not representing government policy. The message was clear. Angela Rayner doesn't matter, don't pay attention to her, the adults are in charge. For someone who'd been elected deputy leader by hundreds of thousands of Labour members and who brought genuine political skills and a significant following to the table, this treatment was both insulting and politically stupid. Trade unions, who'd strongly supported Rayner's deputy leadership campaign, were not impressed. Several union leaders made pointed comments about Rayner being underused and undervalued. Some threatened to reduce their financial support for Labour if the party continued to sideline its working-class voices in favour of managerialist technocrats. The grassroots membership, particularly those who'd voted for Rayner, were increasingly vocal about their frustration. Labour Party conference saw multiple interventions, demanding Rayner be given more prominent roles and more respect. The internal party pressure was building, but Starmer's team seemed determined to ignore it. Fast forward to now, and suddenly everything's changed. Starmer's giving interviews where he can barely contain his enthusiasm for Angela Rayner. She's fantastic, apparently. She's been doing incredible work. He's always valued her contribution enormously. He's hinting strongly that she might be given enhanced responsibilities, brought back into the inner circle, given a more prominent platform. The praise is so effusive, so over the top, that you'd think they'd been best mates all along, and the months of sidelining and humiliation were just a collective hallucination we all experienced. So what's changed? Why the sudden Angela Rayner Appreciation Society? Well, let's look at what's been happening to Starmer's government. His approval ratings are in fall. Labour's polling lead has evaporated. The working-class voters in red wall constituencies who backed Labour are expressing serious buyer's remorse. Trade unions are making threatening noises about withdrawing support and funding. The party membership is restless and questioning whether they made a mistake. In other words, everything's going brilliantly, and Starmer absolutely doesn't need to desperately shore up his support among the exact constituencies that Angela Rayner represents. Oh wait, actually it's the complete opposite of that. The political calculation is so transparent it's almost insulting. Starmer's team have clearly looked at the numbers, panicked, and decided they need to wheel out Angela Rayner to try and win back disillusioned working-class voters and placate angry trade unions. She's being deployed like a political mascot, brought out when needed to prove Labour hasn't completely abandoned its roots, then presumably to be quietly sidelined again once she's served her purpose. It's cynical, it's manipulative, and it's exactly the kind of focus-grouped political tactics that make voters hate Westminster. The question is whether Angela Rayner will play along with this obvious manipulation. She's got several options here, none of them straightforward. She could accept the rehabilitation, take whatever enhanced role she's offered, and try to use it to actually influence policy and reconnect Labour with its base. The risk with this approach is that she becomes complicit in her own exploitation, lending her credibility to a government that's fundamentally not interested in the kind of politics she represents. She'd be providing political cover for Starmer while having limited actual power to change direction. Alternatively, she could refuse to play ball, call out the cynicism, and make it clear she's not interested in being wheeled out for photo opportunities while being excluded from real decision-making. This would be the principled stand, asserting her dignity and making clear she won't be used. The downside is it would create a massive internal Labour crisis, potentially destabilise the government, and hand the opposition parties a massive gift. It would also likely end her political career at the highest level, because challenging a sitting Prime Minister from your own party is pretty much the nuclear option. The most likely scenario is some kind of middle path, where Rayner accepts enhanced visibility and responsibility, but maintains a degree of critical distance, picking her battles and trying to shift policy from within while not being completely absorbed into Starmer's project. It's a difficult balance to strike, and the risks of being compromised or marginalized again are significant. What's fascinating about this whole situation is what it reveals about Starmer's political weakness. A Prime Minister with a massive parliamentary majority shouldn't be desperately rehabilitating a deputy he's spent months sidelining. He should be secure enough in his position to maintain whatever governmental structure he wants. The fact that he's U-turning on Rayner so dramatically suggests his grip on power is far more tenuous than the election results would suggest. He's responding to pressure, reacting to polls, trying to manage various party factions rather than leading confidently with a clear vision. The trade union dimension is particularly important here. Labour's funding model relies heavily on union contributions. If major unions withdraw financial support, Labour's ability to fight elections is seriously compromised. Several unions have made it clear that their continued support is conditional on Labour governing in ways that reflect members' interests, including giving proper prominence to working-class voices like Rayner's. Starmer's sudden Rayner appreciation is clearly partly about keeping those unions on side and ensuring the money keeps flowing. The irony of Starmer needing Rayner to shore up his working-class credentials is delicious because it exposes the fundamental contradiction at the heart of his political project. He wants to be Tony Blair 2.0, appealing to middle-class swing voters in marginal constituencies with moderate managerialist politics. But Labour can't win elections on middle-class votes alone. They need their working-class base, they need the red wall, they need